Male enrollment in college has plummeted over the last decade. Twice the number of young men than women identify as both single and lonely, and an explosion in boom-bust cycles has created insane wealth for a small handful of young men, while absolutely destroying the lives of others who got into the game too late. And I want to talk about all of that today. So I'm an economist by training who has been researching the job market since 2017. I've worked in multiple colleges and high schools in that time, and I've helped over 1,000 young men successfully transition from college into their professional career. So I've observed firsthand how financial FOMO and all of these so-called shortcuts to getting rich quick have harmed more young men than they've actually helped. And I've also seen financial anxiety skyrocket in young men who believe that financial success is the thing keeping them from dating, and how chasing money too early and for the wrong reasons is creating a massive subclass of men who are undereducated, underskilled, rapidly falling behind women at school and at work, and who are just generally frustrated with a society that doesn't seem to care that they're falling so far behind. So let's get into it. Please be sure to like this video and subscribe if you are new, and let's start by diving into boom-bust cycles. At the macro level, a boom-bust cycle is a function of capitalist economies that allow them to self-regulate, for better or worse. For example, whenever there's a surplus of houses tend to become cheaper and interest rates drop as banks are more incentivized to sell as many houses as they can. Cheap houses and low interest rates then lead a bunch of people who weren't necessarily ready to buy a house to buy a house. That starts to reduce the supply, but the tailwind of that demand dramatically outlives the reduction of the supply. And so people will get a ton of FOMO that their friends bought a cheap house, like what happened in 2007, like what happened in 21, and then that uptick in demand dramatically increases the cost of housing for everybody at scale as the demand starts to dramatically outlive the supply. A little simplistic, but that's the gist. This also happened to a lot of cities in the early American West. You would get these towns that were rich in gold or lumber, and so the first people who settled there gained incredible wealth very quickly. And subsequent generations would move to that town to try to get that exact same type of wealth, only to find that the resource was getting increasingly depleted, and so subsequent generations were increasingly poorer and poorer and poorer until the town was eventually abandoned outright. And this exact same thing happens at the micro level too. Some big examples of this are things like Bitcoin and dropshipping. Bitcoin is worth like 72,000 US dollars today, but back in 2015 it was only worth a few $100. And so somebody who got in on Bitcoin in 2015, if they saved their investment to today, could have had a 220x return on that investment, which could turn an even low-level investor into a millionaire seemingly overnight. And so when those people who got incredibly randomly lucky become millionaires, people start to pay attention to them. And now you've got all of these 17-year-old guys looking at these crypto investors in their 20s thinking, gee, I should get into Bitcoin. Dropshipping, similar example of this. That's where you buy a product directly from a manufacturer and then resell it for a profit on like Amazon or Etsy. Wildly successful several years ago, especially when the pandemic broke out. But now there's a bunch of rich influencers from that era who are trying to encourage people to get into dropshipping, and people listen to them because they were seemingly overnight success millionaires. But now the market is heavily oversaturated, and most people who get into something like dropshipping are financial failures. And so it's that oversaturation of fad careers that's kind of the problem here. I saw a report last year that there were more people with real estate licenses in America than there even were houses for sale, which is admittedly a little hilarious, but does lend itself to the point that I'm trying to make. Summer sales has the exact same problem. You get a group of dude bros with flat-brimmed hats who go into some region to start selling solar panels, and they are wildly successful, making like $100 100K over the course of a single summer. And so the company that they're with uses that financial success to market to the next generation of summer sales dude bros. And so another young whippersnapper comes in with a flat-brimmed hat and thinks, I'm gonna make 100K. But the problem is that market has been oversaturated. Everyone in the region who wants a solar panel now has a solar panel, and you finish your summer sales opportunity basically broke. I've even seen oversaturation happen with college degrees. I see way more people getting a degree in something like data science than there actually are companies looking to hire data scientists. And so since the lack of supply has been filled over the last several years, you have to be an extremely competitive candidate to actually land an entry-level job in data science because there are just too many data scientists lying around. And young men in particular are super susceptible to these traps, and there are some pretty clear reasons why. So men are both evolutionarily hardwired and socially conditioned to try to become as successful as possible. And there are some good underlying reasons for this, because all of the good things in life, like art and beauty and nurturing behavior, basically can't exist in an environment that is unsafe or that is lacking resources. And so healthy masculinity at its baseline core is fundamentally concerned with acquiring as much safety and resources as possible, which in today's world could mean being confident and financially successful. And we as people do like to be around confident, successful people, because again, their presence does allow those good things in life to actually exist and flourish. But masculinity starts to get toxic when you apply that desire for power and resources in the wrong ways. Bravado and arrogance are obviously not sexy or desirable traits, but arrogance is a really convenient substitute for confidence when you are a young man who has no resources and no power in a given situation, which is why you see so many young men latch on to things like bravado as a defense mechanism. Money works in the exact same way. Men are desperate to start making money as quickly as possible because they believe that's what society wants from them, and that is the most surefire way to get validation from their parents or women on the dating market or their other douchebag friends who want high-quality bros. And since there's no real upper limit on how many resources you can acquire in this world, this leads a lot of young men into vicious cycles where they start maximizing profit as quickly as they can without developing the education or skills necessary in order to see long-term success. Think about the guy who rushes to finish college in 2 years. He thinks to himself, hey, I'm going to save all the student debt money, I'm going to go straight into the workforce, this is a good idea. But then he gets to graduation and he realizes, one, his resume is blank, and two, he's just not as mature as the other 23 to 25-year-olds that he's graduating alongside, who, back to point one, have more flushed out resumes than he does. And then he realizes that getting a girlfriend after college is really fucking difficult, and that he wasted one of the best opportunities in his life to grow, mature, get low-stakes work experience, find a romantic partner, and make friends that he's ever going to have. And so the short-term benefit of finishing college early creates a long-term frustration as he's not as well prepared to navigate life and maneuver as his peers are. Super quick aside, I'm also suspicious that this is why anabolic steroids have become increasingly cool and normal lately. I think a lot of young guys latch onto that get jacked quick fix because they think that's how they're going to get validation from other men and from women in their life. But the problem with that is that women don't find this attractive. And men aren't going to respect you as soon as your physique becomes unattainable and unnatural looking. But anyway, I'm an economist, not a psychologist, so back to money. You see other guys rush into things like door-to-door sales or crab fishing in Alaska because you can make so much money over a single summer doing that. And that's great in the short term. But what about when you have kids and a wife and a body that starts to break down? Are you going to go crab fishing with a bad back? Are you going to drag your wife and kid to a different US city every single summer? No, you're going to need to find stability and upward advancement in whatever opportunity you go into. And since so many young men pursue these opportunities without thinking about the long term, they set themselves up for long-term failure down the road. Eventually they hit a wall where it's like, yes, maybe you are a good door-to-door salesman, but do you know how to run a business? Do you know how to market? Do you know how to lead other people? Do you have a credential required to get a job further up the ladder? And so a lot of these young men will hit this wall where, yes, they have a lot of real-world experience, but they're losing out to other guys who have more education than they do. And we're seeing this paradigm increasingly reflected in the only 39% of young men who finish high school will even go on to college, and an even smaller percentage of those young men will actually finish college in relation to women. This is in spite of the fact that 70% of all new jobs created require some type of college degree. So there's a mismatch between what people are doing and what the job market actually values. And this is also in spite of the fact that we have overwhelming evidence that of two men born in similar socioeconomic circumstances, the one who has a college degree will make significantly more money over the course of his life. But what we're seeing is that young men who want to make money aren't considering education as a viable option, and there are a few pretty clear reasons for this. Some of it does start early. Young boy brains just develop slower than girl brains do. And so more young boys at scale experience more negative reinforcement about the way that they behave when they're going through the school system. There also just aren't a lot of male teachers in general, and so almost all of the feedback that you get when you're going to school, at least as a kid in America, is overwhelmingly feminine. And so if you're a little boy who is struggling, it's hard to feel like you are a kind of valid and appreciated person in that type of hyper-feminine environment. But again, I'm an economist, not a psychologist, not a child development person, so back to money. Young men just don't buy into the idea that college is worth it. In large part because they are being inundated by rich influencers, many of whom have a college degree, telling them that college is a stupid waste of time. Because yeah, you can get some AWS certification. You can go do a non-tradesman blue-collar job that pays you a lot more money as an 18-year-old than you would make while going to school. But making money isn't the point of education. The point of something like college is to help you grow and develop and gain experiences between ages 18 and 25 when your brain is still developing and you don't actually have anything to show for yourself in the job market. And so those low-level work experiences like internships, research positions, part-time jobs on campus, they give you a fleshed-out resume that you can then leverage to get a high-paying entry-level salary job. But it's also to give you a chance to do things like pay bills and cook and live on your own in a low-stakes setting where making a mistake or having failures isn't going to render you homeless. It's to help you learn critically about things and how to apply knowledge that you've learned into real-world scenarios. Basically, college makes you a better learner. And quite frankly, college is also one of the only places where you can get laid all the fucking time with little to no effort, and when you can go make friends and go drink and have house parties with people, basically do all of those things that somebody says they want when they're 40, but are then no longer young enough to actually appreciate. And so I have a bit of a counterintuitive take on all of this. I think now is the perfect time to start pursuing advanced education as a young man. Do you know how easy it's going to be to get a girlfriend when 75% of the people at your college are women? And do you know how easy it's going to be to get promoted when a decade down the road, you're the only guy at the firm with an education because so few men in your generation decided to go to school that you end up having both advanced credentials and real-world experience that the company values? And I know I'm harping on college, but I don't really care what long game you decide to play. Could be four-year university, could be the military, could be trade school. Hell, you could even go on some journey of self-discovery for several years through religion or travel. You do you. But I want to encourage any young man who's listening to this to at least consider playing the long game. Look, I have a stable income, I have a roof over my head, I have a beautiful wife, I have all those things that I wanted when I was 18, and I'm still under the age of 30. Okay, taking a few years in order to develop skills and experiences and education that's going to slingshot you into a better life is okay. It is okay to take some time. Please, don't let financial FOMO get in the way of your long-term success.